investor quarters out of Sarasota, Florida, and we are so excited to have Jill Lyons with us today. She's actually my broker for my real estate license. She's a property manager. She has over 14 years of experience doing property management, so I cannot wait to hear what she's actually seeing happening with property management and rents and tenants going on during this coronavirus times that we live in, as well as what is happening with rents. Are they fluctuating, and how she's keeping good tenants in place. So with that, Jill, I'll let you take it away.
I thank you, Catherine. And I don't know why my camera keeps popping off. It's just kind of spinning. So I don't know why the video won't work with GoToMeeting. I apologize. But the microphone seems to be working correctly.
Yep.
So I apologize to everybody that you can't see my busy office. But hopefully we can get our point across without the video, and it might come back on intermittently, and see how we go from here. But thank you, Catherine, for having me today. And I know here at Relax Realty Group, we have many, many rentals and have been affected completely, obviously, with this COVID. It's been a little bit of a dance and show, and it's been moments that you get frustrated and moments that you feel really bad for some of the tenants that are going through this hard time. But we're making it through it, and I'm proud of our community. I'm proud of our property managers. I'm super duper proud of our tenants, because on the whole, it really has not been the complete disaster that it had the potential to be.
That is great to hear.
What I'd like to share today is kind of the state of the union of our property manager and what we see as far as numbers. And then I will go through exactly what we're allowed to do and not allowed to do for evictions, because that's a little bit of a confusion. And then I'll take any questions, because I'm sure many people have questions as well. So I'll answer any questions at the end of the session.
Perfect. Sounds great.
So the state of the union, we have here at Relax Realty Group, we have 500 properties. So I can speak based on our kind of snapshot of 500 properties. I'm also on the board of NARPM, which is the National Association of Property Managers here in Sarasota. So I have we have board meetings every month, and of course that's on the top of all of our subjects. So there are 8 other property management companies that I speak with at least on a monthly, sometimes bi-monthly basis, and get a temperature of what they're going on. So that's how that's how I base my information on the snapshots of property management companies. We had a lot of problems in, I would say, April and May, and tenants couldn't pay. They couldn't get their unemployment. They were without funds. We quickly rushed to aid these tenants, and this community was incredibly generous, and they were able to get rent paid for by 8 different organizations that came through for these tenants. So by the end of May, we only had 2 tenants that just were being, taking advantage of the situation and did not pay their rents. Everyone else was taken care of, and all of their rents were paid by local organizations that people donated money to help people in need right now. So there were tons of tenants, obviously, highly emotional, worried that they were going to be homeless, and our community stepped up. So it made my heart so warm for where I live. I mean, I just can't believe how many thousands and tens of thousands of dollars of money came from the community to pay people that really needed the help. They were not taking advantage of the situation. Once the end of May came, and there, everything came to fruition. The unemployment was in much better shape. People got their $1,200. We had almost all the tenants that really were paying on time or communicating with us. We did have a lot of late pays, but today, how we sit, of the 500 homes, I have 13 people that have a longer than 30 days that they haven't paid rent. Everybody else has paid, or they might be slow paying this month, but they're not more than 30 days past due in rents, which is phenomenal under the circumstances. I cannot believe that's the picture we're looking at, you know. I went for at our company, and I'm hoping that, you know, anybody out that was self-managing did the same. You know, we were very, very kind to our tenants. We had absolutely no late fees since March 1st. We have not put any late fees on any of our tenants that were paying late. So we waived all of those, and I have planned on waiving all of them through the end of September right now. And then I'll just see how things go. With COVID and help from the government, and you know, we're kind of getting back in the swing of things, and most tenants have found alternatives. If they're bartenders, they found other jobs. So but I didn't want them to have to worry about late fees. That's the least that we could do under the circumstances. We've over communicated with the tenants. We've expected our tenants to over communicate. You know, we did not text them, where is your rent, so it didn't get misconstrued as us coming in as bullies. We wanted to make sure that we have to know what's going on, obviously, but at the same token, we're calling it with compassion and understanding, not with anything other than that. But 13 not paying is fantastic. Of those 13, I have 7 of them that just are, you know, are totally taking advantage of the situation. They know that they can't get evicted until this month, that we can change that, which is my next subject, but they're totally taking advantage of the situation, and haven't paid rent from the beginning, and probably won't until they have to move and we have to do a formal eviction, and they're going to take advantage of it till the end. But if only 5 do that out of 500, that makes me think that it's a pretty cheery world out there in my in my little world. I think people are good, and they have proven it beyond that. You know, just thinking that.
That's amazing.
Isn't
That
it? I
I
know.
was really nervous when they said you can't evict people back in March. Like I was super nervous, and that's just amazing to hear.
Me too. I mean, how can you not evict? I could just never imagined in a million years that Florida would take away our property rights, you know, with how conservative our state is and everything. I was personally scared with my own rentals. Like, what am I going to do if everybody stops paying rent? But they didn't.
That's wonderful.
As far as so that's the state. Now we did that's the payment state of the union. The turnover state of the union, we did have we had vacancies at the beginning of April that we didn't know what to do because the whole world stopped, and we couldn't, you know, what do you do if you can't be open and you can't drive around? We went and took videos of every single one of our rentals and did video rentals, and that's how we marketed them. And I can't believe it that we rented every single house in April. I mean, we had 12 houses empty, and all of them rented by the end of April, and people moved in May 1st, all by doing it, you know, remotely. I I still felt totally uncomfortable doing it that way, just because there is a lot that I think is very valuable in meeting the tenant. Can you shut my door? I can't do it. But shut Okay. I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of the call. Sorry about that. They needed a signature from me. Um, but we did rent those in April, and we did meet the tenants. I think meeting the tenants is very valuable. One of those tenants, unfortunately, is one that moved in and didn't pay the rent, and everything checked out fine. So that makes me even more sick to my stomach that we didn't meet them. We could have maybe prevented it. It goes to show that, you know, you personally show the house yourself and meet the tenant is what we will never change. We will never go to the remote, which many people are doing. Placement, but I couldn't believe in April that we did place so many tenants. There were a lot of people at the beginning of May that gave their 30-day notices that if COVID didn't happen, they would not have been moving. They just didn't have the money. They changed their jobs. Most of them were moving in with other family members, moving back to a different state and things like that. They just, you know, they gave up. They They had to give up. So we did have a lot of turnover. We did place everybody. There were tenants ready to move in, and we didn't have any long turnovers. I would say the rental market itself, with some of the duplexes and lower end, went down about $50 a month. But right now, today, this month, we see it about the same. Single family homes, in like the $1,500 range, stayed about the same. Um, so I don't know if it was supply and demand, or people just didn't, in the lower end, just didn't have the monies to pay the higher rent, so they did start sitting. So as soon as we reduced it, it was filled completely. Our kind of thinking is, you don't keep it vacant for more than a couple weeks. You want to get somebody in there and start paying. So we are aggressive as far as making the rental at the rate that we get a lot of showings and start to get the applications submitted. So
Do
the
you,
rental rates did go down just slightly.
so I have a question for you. Do you think that the videos, I know that you don't want to go into completely remote placements, but do you think the videos helped you market and gave you a leg up on the advertisement aspect of your properties, and you'll continue to do that moving forward?
Yes, that it did do. And yes, we will put the videos, because it might save us from going to show a house. They can look at that. And tenants, I think, like as much information as they can get online prior to scheduling an appointment. So we did do virtual showings, and we do include a video in most of our rentals now. As some it doesn't do it any good. It actually kind of hurts it. So when it will enhance the property, then yes, we take a video of it.
Awesome. Are you doing, I've seen some really cool things come out for like listings about like the 3D cameras, and I don't know exactly what it's called, and walk through, or are you just walking through kind of describing it the way that I feel like I do on Instagram stories all the time, or Facebook stories to show a
We
property?
just walk through, and then put it on YouTube.
Cool. Okay.
So we don't do like a for sale formal 3D video.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah. And we have a young girl here that's good at editing. And so she does a lot of the editing and writing. And I didn't know that she had that mad skill. So we're taking advantage of that. It's actually a VA out of Guadalajara.
Very cool. That's
So yeah,
awesome.
that was kind of interesting. There's always good and bad. When it started to become May, we would open the door for people and not go in with them. Um, and and just stay outside so we could keep the social distancing. So we wanted to keep everybody safe. Nobody is within our company has had COVID. I think everybody except for me. I tested for antibodies just because I was curious, but everybody's tested, but they always tested negative. So if they weren't feeling great, they tested, because we're with so many people, but each time it was negative anytime anybody did a test here. But we did, our office is physically closed except for by appointment only. And we have been very conscientious because we want to keep taking care of these properties. We don't have time to be sick.
No, nobody has time to be sick. I don't
I
feel like.
know, I know. I don't know if anybody has any questions on State of the Union before I get into the evictions. If anybody has any questions on that, I'd be happy to help you.
If you have questions, please post here. Guys, I just threw a comment into the chat box. If you guys do have questions, please feel free to post them right there and we'll get them answered, and make sure that Jill sees them. And I guess while we wait, let's go ahead and start talking about evictions and what you hear is coming
Okay,
up.
so evictions is the hot topic, obviously. They immediately, Congress, with their CARES Act, they stopped evictions on any government funded homes. And I'll go into what a CARES Act property is. And then for non-CARE Act properties, immediately the state of Florida's Supreme Court halted any writ of possessions, and the governor stopped all evictions no matter what. So all evictions, no matter what the eviction was for, was halted back in April
Okay.
until this past month. So we weren't allowed to do anything as of June or July 28th. The CARES Act was gone, and nothing has been reenacted. Government, or President Trump did a presidential order, but that does not affect us at all. He directed HUD to do something, but HUD didn't do anything. So anything that the president did on his own does not affect us here in Sarasota, Florida, in any way, nor does it affect really anywhere else in the country. But we do have to consider what versus a CARES Act property versus a non-CARES Act property with our notices. So as of the end of July, the moratorium on evictions is still in place only for writ of possession. You are allowed to do any part of the eviction process, including notices, non-payment of rent, and the only thing the governor extended is for non-payment of rent, you cannot get your writ. So you can get everything except for the writ of possession. Now, it's really important to know what type of notice that you want to post on the door, because if you have a mortgage on your property that is a bank issued, you probably have a federal loan on your property. So if it's a federally backed Fannie Mac, Fannie Mae backed property, say that 10 times fast, you cannot post anything except for a 30-day notice, and it's 30 calendar days, not because the 3-day notice eliminates weekends and holidays, but the 30-day notice does not. So it's 30 calendar days if it is a federally funded loan. If you don't know if your loan is federally backed or not, call the service provider. You get a statement, call that number and ask them if it's federally backed. They'll be able to answer that question simply and easily. So if you're not sure, before you pay all the money for your eviction, make sure that you do call the service provider. So I'll go through the CARES Act property. So you post your 30-day notice, and then you continue on with your eviction just as if it were, filing the complaint and whatnot. Just the notice that will be included with the complaint is not the 3-day notice, it's the new 30-day notice. If you need a 30-day notice, I can help you with that. So I can email it to you. You can just give me your email at the end and I'll give you that 30-day notice. You can also, I get a lot of information from evict.com, and they have a 30-day notice right on their front page of their website as well. So that is for a CARES Act property, for a non-payment of rent. If you have a non-payment of rent customer, and one thing that they have emphatically, every lawyer I've talked to, do not include any late fees, period. They might owe late fees. You may want your late fees, but tough, don't include your late fees. It's going to seem like a bully, and the judge, if you get to that point, will not look kindly on you adding late fees onto people's rents at this time. So for the eviction process, just take the late fees off and just file for non-payments of rent. Even if you have in your lease that their late fees are included as rents, don't include your late fees. That's what was been suggested, and that's what we will always do. If it's not a federally backed loan, then you continue on with a non-payment for rent just as if it wasn't COVID time. But again, keep your late fees off. So your 3-day notice, just post on the door without the 3 days, without any late fees, just the rents that they owe. And you can legally file for eviction, file your complaint, give them 5 days. You can do a default. If they respond, you can request the default with a response, and ask for your final judgment. Just once you get your final judgment, whether there'll be a court date or not, you will not be able to get the writ of possession. So perhaps as soon as September 1st, the writ of possession will be able to be received, but we don't know what the governor is going to do. I'm sure he'll look at statistics and see how many people will be homeless the day after September 1st if he should waiver, that writ of possession. But regardless, the Supreme Court of Florida has to end their halt on all writs as well. So both of those will have to be lifted before we can get any writ of possessions. But once you have your final judgment, as soon as the writ is received, as soon as we're allowed to, you can go to the clerk and get it the next day. The clerk of the court just let go of half of their employees, so I'm sure things are going to go quite slow. Expect things to be a lot slower. You might not be able to get the writ the next day. It might take longer for things to be filed. It might take longer for things to go through its process, but we'll still, at least we can start the process. We did receive a writ of possession last week for somebody that was breaking their lease. They were breaking codes and zones. So you can file eviction for anything except for, and get the writ of possession for anything except for non-payment of rent today.
Jill, is that just for Sarasota County? Is that for the state of Florida?
The writ of possession
Yes.
for non-payment of rent, that's the state of Florida.
Okay, but everything else for the state of Florida is still moving forward.
Everything else with the state of Florida is still moving forward for the writ of possession. So if somebody's breaking the lease and the terms of the lease, you can file for eviction and get the writ of possession. We actually had filed on this gentleman back in March before COVID hit, and had to wait that long for the writ of possession because it was put on hold. So the day after it was put on hold, we asked the judge and he signed it within a few days.
Awesome.
So that being said, you can, if a tenant is in a month-to-month lease, you can give them notice to leave, and you can file an eviction, and it wouldn't be for non-payment of rent, it would be for ending the lease. And you can receive the rent that way. However, it hasn't been tried, so we don't know what will happen if you file for eviction that way and that tenant hasn't paid rent also for 3 months. We don't know if they respond to the judge on that eviction filing that they haven't paid rent, they can't pay rent, they're going to be homeless, and this is COVID related. You might not be able to get the rent, the writ. I don't know what the judges are going to do. We're in uncharted territories, and we're going to try a few, so to stay tuned. And I will know at some point what we're able to do with that situation. I think the judges will be compassionate to those people that haven't paid rent and can't, and will be very careful in terms of giving writ of possessions to people that really are in a non-payment of rent situation too, and we're just trying to use the other way to get them out. But I don't know. I don't know how the judges in Sarasota and Manatee County are going to do.
It'll be interesting to see.
It will be interesting to see. If they're obviously breaking code and being bad tenants, then I believe that they will absolutely give us the opportunity to get rid of bad tenants. But if they just aren't paying, and we are trying to get them out because they're not paying in other ways, I think that they might look not too favorably on that and put us on hold.
Yeah. Jill, there was a question that came in from Mac. Has anyone encountered fair housing testers recently?
I have not, but I wouldn't know if I did or not, because we always just follow the laws if anybody asks me any questions, and I'm very careful with fair housing. That's the last thing I ever want to complain or have to deal with.
Okay.
Anybody else?
That's the only question that's come in so far.
Okay. That is all I have for evictions in terms of the information I have. I don't know if anybody has any questions on evictions or anything else for that matter at this stage.
Jill, I'm curious, what's the word in the grapevine? Do you feel like it's going to lift in September, or I mean, at some point it's going to have to, right?
I think it's going to lift in September, especially since Congress and the federal government has not done anything. I think that DeSantis will follow the trend, and will lift that on September 1st. That's my thinking, especially since our state is open for business and is people are able to get jobs somewhere. They not be at the bar, but they can certainly do other things at this stage.
Right. It's definitely interesting, but it's crazy to me. I had to run a couple of errands yesterday, and how empty stores still are. I'm ready for everything to open completely back up so we can get all the manufacturers back to work.
It's eerie. The traffic around here is very slow. Everything is very slow. Now that people aren't getting that extra $600 a week, I think that there'll be another wave of struggling tenants, and there'll be another wave of people that actually have to leave and vacate, especially if evictions are back up and running. We're not going to keep a tenant that can't pay. So they will have there. I suspect that I lived through the 2008, 2009, 2010 crash, and there was a lot of turnover during that time, just with this type of a situation. There's turnovers, and that's what that's what we will see.
In the 08, 09, that turnover compared to this, do you see more demand now or back then? What do you see on that front?
There back then there was a lot more vacancies for longer because people were hurt and they just absolutely couldn't pay, and there wasn't any construction jobs, or there weren't, there was a lot more jobs that were hurt by the crash than now. So I really think, but I think in the next 6 months we will see similarities to the 2008, 2009 crash, just because things aren't picking up. People aren't getting the government $600 a week. I mean, that made a huge difference. And so I think it's going to be very similar. I think that people will have to leave. The thing that I did see back in 2009 is people in, $2,500 rentals had to go down to $1,500 rentals, and people in $1,500 rentals had to go down to 700 rentals. So we didn't necessarily have them empty. There was just a shift in people going down in the price of the rental that they could afford. And then there was many that had to move and go back to, Indiana or Michigan, or, went back to their home state. They just couldn't afford to be here.
Yes. Wesley has a question. Do you believe that the high number of turnover will continue to lower the housing prices?
If it happens gradually, unfortunately, I think over the next 60 days that we could have a large amount of people that have to move because of the government taking away the $600 instantaneously, and people don't really plan or do anything. I'm sure that even if it was more than what they were making, they probably didn't save any of it. Hate to say it, but that's the truth of the fact. They got a new phone or something like that instead. If we get a lot more people that move, then the rental rates will go down for a couple months. It won't be dramatic, but it will. In the 2009 turnover, we were renting houses for $1,300, and they were reduced $200 a month on average over the course of a couple years. And then they stayed there for a couple years, and then it went back up gradually, and then it went up higher than that. That $1,300 house right now would be about $1,700. So we did have to go down with all of the rentals in our block about $200 a month, and then hold, but we didn't have vacancies at all. So if you're in a real tight, small cash flow basis, you might have to contribute to your investment for a period of time. But if you have enough cash flow, you're just going to be in a situation where you don't have as much cash flow, perhaps for a couple years, if this doesn't turn around. I don't think anybody's going to know exactly what's going to happen until after this election. I don't think any of us know what's going to happen. I think that what's true with the economy and what's true with what's really happening will surface after November. But I would plan, if I was, I am an investor, and for me and my planning, I have a mortgage on each one of my properties, and I have cash flow, but I'm taking all of my cash flow and saving it right now so that, I don't have any problems or issues, and I'm cash, I have cash to hold on if I need to.
Yeah.
I know the banks, in order to get a loan, you have to show 1 full year of mortgage payments in your bank in order to get a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac mortgage today.
Those are actually starting to loosen up a little bit, or at least for the loans that I'm working with.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so they are requiring, for the most part, at least 3 months out of deferment. So you have to show 3 consecutive payments and not be in it, because why would somebody loan you money if you're saying that you can't pay your current mortgage on anything? Makes sense
Yep.
to me. But they are starting to loosen a little bit back up. And I just got an email this morning that said that they have lowered, some banks have lowered their credit scores down to 620 again. So that's a good thing that they're still lending. Because if my understanding is that's when everything really dried up back in 08, 09 was when the lenders stopped dispersing money. So, but it's definitely going to be interesting how everything plays out over the next 6 months. And with all that cash saved up, you'll be able to expand your rental portfolio if it's best case scenario, right?
Or pay off the mortgage so I don't have to worry about it ever again.
That too. So very cool. So Jill, really quick, if anybody has any last questions, then I want to ask you, what would you give advice for people who are new landlords and are managing themselves? What would be your words of wisdom that you'd share with them?
I really think in hindsight, we can see what has worked is over communicating to your tenants. I mean, I personally gave each of my tenants a little Publix gift card at the beginning so that I recognized that it was a tough time and I wanted to help them and their family through this. So I was kind to them at the beginning. And I think that overall, our company was super duper kind to the tenants. And that's why we've had such success. So don't look at your tenant as paying you your mortgage. Think of it as this is their home. Overall, I just think that tenants should be treated with such respect and kindness. They're writing the check, and that makes them make a difference on how good they take care of your home, how they pay you, and how they feel they want to treat you back.
Awesome. I definitely love that. I definitely believe you get what you give. So
And most of my personal tenants in my personal house, they all stay there the whole time. And I mean, every single one of my tenants has been the first tenant since I bought that house and has never moved.
that's
But
amazing.
not all my owners, I only had two other owners that actually physically wanted to give gift certificates to their own tenants. So it's not necessary, but I truly believe the more you give, the better you receive, and they stay. And even if increase it $50 a month, they want to stay because they want a nice landlord.
Yeah. I 110% agree with all of that. Well, thank you so much, Jill, for joining us today. I don't see any other questions coming in, so I know that you've got a crazy busy day. And thank you so much for joining us, okay?
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you everybody for attending. Nice to meet you.
Yes.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
y'all.